Hello and welcome to the latest video in our Sustainability Perspective series, where we're sharing interviews with thought leaders from across the packaging value chain. So today we'll be gaining insights from flexible packaging manufacturer Constantia Flexibles, a specialist in the areas of consumer and pharmaceutical flexible packaging. My name is Elisabeth Skoda. I'm editor-at-large at Packaging Europe, and with me today is Daniel Winkler, who is Executive Vice President for Corporate Strategy and Sustainability at Constantia Flexibles. So today we'll discuss challenges around sustainability perceptions of packaging and how this can be addressed. We'll explore innovations in the area of recyclable flexibles, and we'll also take a look at trending materials. And then we'll also have a look at take a look at the wider view at the flexible packaging markets, and also explore the opportunities within it, and take a look at the role of collaboration and R&D in all this. So yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, for being here today. I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Yes, hello, Elisabeth, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction and a warm welcome. My name is Daniel Winkler. I'm responsible for that corporate strategy you just mentioned and sustainability, and member of the executive committee in Constantia Flexibles. And yeah, I do work in the packaging industry for many years in rigid and in flexibles, and I'm happy to be here today. Constantia, as I understood, I am allowed to introduce our company a little bit.
Absolutely.
Constantia Flexibles is the world's third largest producers of flexible packaging, we believe, mainly primary packaging for food and pharma products. And with our about 8,550 people, we manufacture tailor-made packaging solutions at 37 plants worldwide, in Europe, in North America, and in Asia. Constantia developed from a family-owned business to a leading global partner and key supplier in the consumer and pharma industries, with still a very strong European focus. Our portfolio includes a wide range of products based on aluminum, plastics, and paper substrates. And we are serving markets with a number of product lines, like confectionery and packaging, lidding foil for dairy and beverage products, processed foods and snacks, and aluminum container systems, as well as capsules for food and beverages. And sustainability is the topic of the day, I understand. And yes, sustainability is a top priority for Constantia Flexibles. And you can see that also in our ratings. We are proud to have an A-level rating by CDP and a gold status by EcoVadis.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'm looking forward to delve a bit deeper during the course of this interview. And I'd like to start with taking a broad view on the flexible packaging landscape. Obviously, flexible packaging offers many advantages, but it also faces some challenges when it comes to the perception of how sustainable it actually is. So how does Constantia Flexibles address this challenge?
Yeah, that's right. There are challenges, but let's first have a look at what packaging actually does, at least when it comes to primary packaging. It protects food and pharmaceuticals, and I think we need to repeat that constantly and educate a little bit. It keeps them away from UV radiation, water vapor. It keeps them away from oxygen and other substances, which would turn them into waste quickly. And especially during the COVID pandemic, many people have learned that packaging can do for them what packaging can do for them in terms of keeping things clean and hygienic. And on top of that, it ensures that communication is actually happening with the consumer. It has to fulfill all sorts of regulations, features which are demanded by laws, regulators, and of course our clients. And these are the main things packaging actually does. Before all the challenges you mentioned above, of course, and it is a challenge of multiple origins. First of all, there is a lack of information, which is shaping the perception of packaging, mainly plastics packaging. And that reputation is not so good. In many cases, packaging is perceived primarily as waste, whilst it actually is a valuable raw material, we believe. Secondly, packaging format does not compare to packaging format, which means a rigid packaging, for example, serves different purposes than a flexible packaging, and are not very easy to interchange. Number three, packaging substrates, and that is the main challenge in the past and until just recently, have been often made of mixed materials like alu paper, polyethylene, polypropylene, and mixed versions of all of that together, and therefore it is difficult to make it circular and recyclable. And we at Constantia Flexibles are clearly committed to a circular economy and widely rely on the use of monomaterials. And we think this is the difference we can make, we as Constantia, but the whole industry can make. And if we look at the history of Constantia, in our first plant in Austria, we are working with aluminum from the beginning. And for those who don't know aluminum, it is one of the best performing packaging materials. And it turns out that it's almost endlessly recyclable. While with a few exceptions, most of other packaging substrates are actually downcycled. And they go into a second life, which is also great. But again, it is not so easy to turn them into the same quality of packaging as it was before. And that is a big difference. But please don't understand that wrongly. We, of course, there is a reason why there are different materials out there. And that is why we are following also a so-called 360-degree approach when it comes to packaging substrates. And the big difference we try to make is that we focus on the so-called monomaterial solutions, which are perfectly recyclable and circular, whilst trying to deliver the same performance for the tailor-made solutions we offer to our clients.
Yes, so you mentioned monomaterials just now. I'd be interested to dig a little bit deeper there and find out a bit more about Constantia Flexibles' developments in that area.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, while we believe we are well prepared for the transformation towards monomaterials and into a more circular value chain, this is a challenge of the wider industry. We truly believe that challenge is not just for us or for the packaging industry, it is a challenge of the whole value chain. We need to consider that. And I mean, we have put a huge effort into R&D and thousands of trials in order to develop more sustainable packaging solutions. Like already in 2018, where we have introduced the so-called Ecolutions product range to the market. So we started early, and the first of this solution was the so-called Ecolam product. It is a mono PE laminate, which is able to substitute non-recyclable laminates, such as PET PE or polyamide PE, or even PET alu PE structures. And this Ecolam substrate has been certified by recyclers to be compatible with readily available sorting and recycling technologies, which are commonly used already at industrial scale in Europe. So, but I don't want to bother you with details too much. So we also developed mono material PP solutions, which are in the supermarket shelves already today. And we also offer recyclable paper structures to the market, whilst, as I mentioned before, most of our aluminum products are already recyclable and available in the market.
Great. And you've obviously mentioned different materials. And I was wondering, from your observations, which products and materials have been trending recently?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so recently we have experienced a revival of aluminum in the coffee and beverage sector. The beverage properties aluminum offers, combined with the fact that it can be recycled almost endlessly, is obviously helping that trend. We see an uptick in barrier paper demands, although recent raw material price hikes are creating a bit of a concern amongst the players in the market. like it happens actually in many other material areas as well. And we have recognized an increasing demand of our PE monomaterial solutions, the famous Ecolam I mentioned already before. So we do see a trend towards monomaterials, towards demand of more recyclable solutions, significantly actually.
And yeah, I'd like to take a closer look at the flexible packaging market and the challenges and opportunities it faces. And yeah, let's start with the regulatory and industry standards. Could you remind us what is planned from a regulatory point of view coming up, and also tell us what your thoughts are on what more is needed to create a fully circular economy?
Sure, I mean, that is a complex topic. And I have to say that even without regulations or regulators, our industry, the packaging industry, is moving already towards a higher circularity. As everyone has understood by now that raw materials are scarce, greenhouse gas emissions have to be reduced, and global warming needs concrete and decisive action to be at least slowed down. However, in order to ensure fair competition, stable, consistent market environment, and a much needed infrastructure for a circular economy, we need regulations. We need regulations and guidelines to help us and support the whole value chain to transform. And therefore, we do appreciate the intention of the European Commission and other regulators to create a sensible and harmonized legal environment. And well, to come up with some examples in response to the plastics waste problem, governments across the regions are taking action through market-based measures. Like this year in April, we saw a new plastic tax coming into force in the UK. This plastic tax applies to plastic packaging product, which is produced in the UK or imported into the UK, and it should contain a certain level of recycled content. If you don't fulfill that, you pay tax. That is a good principle because it should help the recycling industry in general. However, if such regulation is applied differently and implemented differently across the EU or even beyond the EU, this could create a bit of an administrative and bureaucratic burden to the whole industry. So we do hope for more harmonization here. And then, of course, there is one very big topic, the European Green Deal, which we fully support in terms of its objective to continuously improve the environmental performance of packaging, and is in line with the circularity targets and the climate neutrality objectives of the European Union. But there is a tricky part. Such regulations are not easily defined and implemented as they are, or as they have implications and consequences for a super wide range of industries. It's not just the packaging producers which are affected, it is the food and pharma companies of this world, it's the collecting, sorting and recycling industry, it's the retailers, and it is also the consumers who are seriously affected. So here we are happy to help and liaise with regulators and even politicians, and we would wish sometimes that they would listen a bit more to us. I can give you an example on the recently developed draft proposal around the so-called Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, which is still scheduled for this year. We are a bit concerned. To our knowledge, there was a threshold discussion for a 95% threshold of the unit of packaging which needs to be recycled, which is a good idea, however, technically not possible with most of packaging, at least flexibles packaging formats. And as you know, flexibles packaging is super thin and super lightweight. So the mere ink of a printing, for example, which puts necessary information on the packaging would already be more, or could already be more than those 5%. So in reality, we would need to make packaging thicker in order to fulfill that threshold. And then again, this would be the opposite effect of what the EU Green Deal actually intended to achieve. So we know this process is ongoing, and we are of high hopes that this is going to change over time, and that we also can address this concern. And the good thing, there is already a solution out there. The solution is the design for recycling guidelines, which you might have heard about. There is several out there, and could already be applied by the regulator, and maybe with a bit of fine-tuning, be a solution to that specific problem I just addressed. And yeah, we just want to avoid a whole lot of disruption in the value chain, or even a shortfall in food or pharma supply or things like that, by having malfunctioning regulations out there.
Yeah, it's definitely important to keep talking and try to guide this a little bit, definitely. So yeah, I was wondering, what role would you say can the European packaging industry play sort of on this path to the circular economy?
Well, we are already deeply involved. There is all sorts of platforms, there are NGOs, and we are also, as I said before, sometimes invited by the regulators to provide our opinion and our input, and we are appreciating that a lot, and we will continue to do so. I think the main topic is that we work together, as I said, across that value chain, but also within the industry. So here we have to set an understanding and new standards in order to make circular economy work. And this is what we are already doing today, and have to continue to do.
And yeah, I was wondering about the consequences. Are there sort of any results already of these of this work that you can talk about?
Well, we need to be clear about one thing. We can offer recyclable product solutions, but customers need to buy them in the end. Consumers need to reuse or dispose packaging properly if there is the proper infrastructure for that. And only then recyclers can collect them and put that material back into the circle. And this is the number one issue, and that's a systemic issue, if you want. Number two, if we want to use that pioneering role of the European packaging industry, we should first and foremost not get into our own way, because we make unrealistic promises. So we need to continuously work on the future to ensure that packaging can be reused and recycled tomorrow. This requires a lot of R&D. This requires also necessary investments in the respective recycling technologies. And this is an effort or a burden, if you wish, which needs to be shouldered by the whole value chain again. We cannot do this alone. And if you look at the available capacity, recycling capacity, there is maybe only half of the capacity installed, which is actually needed to process the packaging materials in the cycle today. So lots of things still to be done here together. And number three, if we look at the facts, packaging plays a minor part in a product's total environmental footprint, but it plays a major role in its preservation. So this is especially true for the flexible packaging, representing at least half of the food primary packaging placed on the EU markets, at least when you put it per product unit, whilst it counts only for 1/6 of packaging material used in terms of weight. And increasing resource efficiency is a key part of the EU strategy for a smart and sustainable economy. According to the waste hierarchy established in the EU Waste Framework Directive, reducing the amount of waste generated at the source, also called prevention, is regarded as the highest priority. And this is why we are convinced that exactly because of that, flexible packaging should, can, and will play an important role for a more sustainable future.
Yes, and you mentioned the importance of working together, and yeah, I was wondering about your thoughts on the role that collaborations across the value chain can play to address sustainability challenges. And yeah, I'd also wondering if which ones Constantia is involved in, and if you could tell me a bit more about that.
Well, there are many examples where we are active. We focus on different initiatives. We focus on different initiatives with suppliers, customers, regulators. One good example is the so-called Holy Grail initiative. The initiative's goal is to improve packaging sorting technology. So is addressing a very specific topic of the circular economy. And it works with an invisible digital watermark. It actually enables materials to be sorted automatically, instantly, and very quickly into the right material value stream. And this is what we do together with our customers. We are a leading part of that project, for example, and we try to solve a specific problem of the circular economy in this case. There's many other examples like that.
Great. And obviously R&D is also key to developing sustainable solutions. And I was interested in finding out a bit more about Constantia's approach to R&D and new developments.
We do believe in evolution through science, and we invest a lot in R&D. We see three pillars in that respect when it comes to the packaging industry. Number one is design for recycling. One needs to design a packaging from the beginning in order to make it recyclable. That's important. And we need to rethink materials. There are better materials and materials which are not so good for recycling. And then there is the simple downgauging, meaning making things using lesser material, which is still a very valid way of improving carbon footprint and increasing circular economy.
Great. And yeah, to wrap things up, I wanted to touch on a current topic. And yeah, unfortunately, we live in challenging times where a pandemic was followed by a war. And I was wondering, what effects do you think this will have on the packaging and sustainability landscape, and what can be done to maybe mitigate the effects?
Well, you're right. The last few years have been tough. Many colleagues of mine who have been in this business for decades say one thing: it has never been as intense and challenging as it has been lately. But all these challenges also have their positive sides, I think. We still managed to achieve stable business, and even though the pandemic, for example, meant that part of our workforce, like many other workforces, had to manage the company from the home office suddenly from one day to the next, and it still worked. In our plants, we have developed strict safety and isolation concepts so production could continue. Employees could stay safe, and by that ensure that supermarket shelves and pharmacy storages could still be filled properly throughout the whole pandemic. So we proved that we can work also under very difficult circumstances, and all these circumstances have been, of course, stressing on our minds the whole time. And unfortunately, just as you thought this is over, another knocks on the door, and some uninvited new things are coming, like a political crisis or a raw material shortage, like we see that just recently. But again, specifically that one, the raw material shortage, again shows us how important it is to use resources as efficient and as circular as possible. And yeah, we don't want to complain. Thanks to our outstanding teams and good collaboration with shareholders, partners, customers, we were able to manage very well, and I'm very confident that we will also solve that challenge of bigger, higher circularity in our industry together. And we just keep on doing what we are doing. We rethink packaging every day.
Great, yeah, that seems a very good way forward, and maybe also the seeing crises as a sort of way to even further boost the circular strategies. Great, so yeah, that brings us to the end of today's discussion. So yeah, that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Daniel, for joining me today, and thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And yeah, you can subscribe to Packaging Europe or follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter if you'd like to keep up to date with any upcoming discussion panels, interviews, and commentaries. Thanks very much.